What's up, YouTube? Welcome to this 3.19 Lightning Strike Berserker guide update video. Now, this is going to be a very short guide, and I'm pretty much making this video because I know that there are a lot of people out there who kind of want to try out Lightning Strike Berserker because they just love the build so much. So I did update the PoE. I spent some time on stream doing it, and the build still looks super strong. There are some changes that happened to the build, mainly the horrible nerfs that GGG implemented, but we're able to find a way around it, and I do think this version of the build is probably still the best. Now, if you guys don't really know what the build looks like, here's just like some sample footage of what it looks like to do Maven. It is the same amazing build as always. It's great for bossing. You can do uber bosses. It can trivialize simulacrum. It has infinite scalability. You name it. And this time around, it is slightly worse because of the global nerfs that GGG have added to the game, but we did find some interesting changes that actually makes it a lot smoother to play, and I'll go into that a little bit. So let's go see. First off, we want to look at what 3.19 has brought to the table. And 3.19 brings a lot of global nerfs for all builds, like the removal of the reservation mastery, the removal of life tap divine blessing, a nerf to Defiance Banner, and brittle changes, and those are pretty much the four main things that we'll try to address. There's actually one more thing, which is suppression has pretty much been nerfed across the board on gear, so you can't get 35% or 34% suppress on a shield, you can't get like 22% on helmet, you can't get 30% on a chest piece anymore, so you need to find some innovative ways to get around that. Now, Lightning Strike Berserker is still an absolutely amazing option that is exceptionally tanky while offering you insane damage. I do know that a lot of people have been trying to look into playing Venom Gyre, Deadeye, and I do think that Lightning Strike Berserker is the better overall build, and mainly just because the build is tankier. It's really hard to beat the Fortify effect so that you get an insane amount of EHP, and not only do you miss the Fortify effect, you also miss Berserk, which with the Berserk helmet enchant, Berserk is actually a 20% damage reduction. So with 30% Berserk effect, you're missing 26% damage reduction there. And then another like 21% from Fortify. So this build is infinitely tankier than Venom Gyre or Deadeye. Now, clear-wise, Lightning Strike always has that issue where it kind of gets stuck on pebbles, but I do think Venom Gyre Deadeye is slightly better for clear than Lightning Strike Berserker, but Lightning Strike kind of wins out in terms of the overall package because it is a much tankier build. Now, a lot of people might also be wondering, should you play Lightning Strike Champion, Lightning Strike Raider, Lightning Strike Berserker? And I think this time around the choice is a lot more clear to me than ever before because other builds have lost a significant amount of damage, and not only do you lose damage from not having Divine Blessing on your auras, not having the reservation mastery, and the brittle changes does not really affect Raider and Champion at all. But another thing to keep in mind is that most builds will no longer be able to get as much damage purely because you can't get the same type of claws and you can't get the same type of gear. Like, gone are the days of getting like triple attribute Omni rings or a triple T1 claw with a T1 attack speed and T1 crit chance, and it's just going to be a lot harder to get good gear. So Lightning Strike Berserker is able to do a lot more with a lot less. Like, if you look at this PoB right here, this PoB is probably around 2 to 2.5 times more damage than a Raider or Champion profile. And even if you turn off Berserk, most profiles for Lightning Strike, Raider, and Champion are nowhere near this amount of damage, even if you get rid of Berserk completely. So first off, in order to understand what changes have we actually made to this build in 3.19, we need to see exactly what are the nerfs. So Brittle has been completely destroyed from 15 to 6%. And even though this might seem like a big deal, in the PoB we do have Brittle, and I did set the Brittle at 4%, and even at 4% it kind of caps it out. And yeah, so you can see here, 6% it would be overcapped, so at 4%, which is pretty normal. So if you have 4% brittle, it would be like getting 10% brittle last patch. Now, you no longer have easy Divine Blessing with Life Tap. So this means before people were pretty much cheating with Divine Blessing and they linked it to Life Tap. So you sacrifice your life instead of mana in order to cast your auras. And what this means is that you can't run Wrath, you can't run Anger, Determination, and Defiance Banner, and Grace. So you can see here in this build right now, I'm running Determination, Wrath, Defiance Banner, and Grace. So before we were able to run an Anger, Divine Blessing, and bring up the damage a lot, but now we can no longer do that. Now Defiance Banner did get a slight nerf. The Defiance Banner is technically better defensively since it makes it so you can't get crit, but now you no longer have what's it called? 49. You no longer have 49% increased armor and evasion rating. I think it goes to 24%. I'm not really sure why this thing hasn't updated, but regardless, Defiance Banner will result in you having a little bit lower evasion and armor value for Perseverance. Now, this next change is actually a pretty annoying one that everyone pretty much has to deal with, which is the removal of Reservation Mastery. And this means now we have to craft a helm using a Reservation Efficiency Essence, Mastery, I mistyped this, or utilize a small Reservation Efficiency cluster. So you can see here, for these nodes now, we don't even have another Reservation Mastery to take because the Reservation Mastery pretty much just doesn't exist anymore. So what this means is that we'll probably have to take a Reservation Efficiency on an Essence. So crafting the helmet will become a lot harder. Another way you can get around this is you can craft a small Reservation Efficiency cluster. So I don't even know if you can do the cluster jewel here, but you can basically use a cluster jewel and that should help out. So you would pretty much just socket it into here once you go a one cluster tree. So you put a small cluster here. So you'll be doing Reservation Efficiency. Now, the global nerf to spell suppression on gear also means that a rare shield is a lot worse now. So what this means is that before we were using a rare shield and you'd be able to get up to 30% spell suppression. So we look at the shields that we used to use. So this one right here is a new one in that it only would give 15% spell suppression. So if you look at the shield now, the shield loses a lot of its value. Now, the reason behind that is we could just use Red Blade Banner, and Red Blade Banner actually allows us to drop these 4 points that we used to take. So we are able to drop these 4 points, and we're even able to put these 4 points into like Inveterate, and this actually allows you to get a bunch of spell suppression. And since Lightning Strike Berserker is already a pretty point-starved tree, this actually means that we're able to save points and have more flexibility on our tree. Now, this is the new setup we're going to be using since we no longer have the Divine Blessing. We actually have an extra 4-link, and the 4-link I used to use before the Divine Blessing shenanigans was Ancestral War Chief, Ancestral Protector, multiple totems, and Culling Strike. And this actually does help with DPS a lot, and it does give you culling and allows you to drop this cluster over here as long as you're using Anomalous Blood Rage to get your frenzy charges. So for 3.19, what I decided to do, as I said, was we're going to be running Red Blade Banner again, and this allows us to drop 4 points on the passive tree. And most importantly, it allows us to have a much higher Berserk uptime, so we don't need to always be next to the boss when we Warcry. Every single time we Warcry, as long as we Warcry underneath 25 Rage, we'll have maximum Rage from Warbringer node. And I do think that Lighthouse is actually on the Atlas this time around, so it should be a lot easier to get this shield. I don't also think that many people are playing General's Cry, so this shield should be relatively cheap and obtainable. And this is the shield that we used to use a long time ago, but this time around it should be a lot better when we use the shield, and it should be a much better quality of life, and it will feel a lot better to use because your Berserk uptime is pretty much just going to be only the cooldown of Berserk. So like I said, we're going to drop the Divine Blessing Wrath or Divine Blessing Anger, depending on which one you're running. And this allows us to get the damage back from running a multiple totem setup with Ancestral War Chief and Ancestral Protector. If you can look at here, the Ancestral War Chief totem is a significant chunk of damage. So when we click that, and if you look at the difference between using like an Anger Aura, so Anger Aura is roughly like 24.7%, and the totem is like 18.2%. So it's not too big of a deal. And it should be more fun to play to build in general. And this does get rid of one of the buttons that was really annoying to press. And Divine Blessing had a cast time, so it always felt really bad to cast. So this is just a much better quality of life. And we did used to play with multi-totem with Ancestral Protector and War Chief in the past. So it shouldn't really be that big of a shock that this build will still function without Divine Blessing Life Tap. Now, I did play around with potentially dropping the Perseverance belt, but the Perseverance belt is just too good. around like 40k armor, 40k evasion, is 200% elemental damage with attacks. And most importantly, it also gives you onslaught while fortified. And since we'll be proccing fortified with these nodes over here, that means that we'll pretty much have onslaught too. And the belt just has too much value. And until you get a mage blood, perseverance is incredibly hard to beat. Either you get a mage blood or a headhunter. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Secrets of Suffering is still mandatory for capping out the crit, and even at 4% brittle, it's still super strong. Now, something that's underrated is that with Secrets of Suffering, we can run Anger Aura, and that actually allows us to cap out our Scorched. And before we actually get Omni, having 30% pen from Scorch is a pretty big deal. And we only need like 4% to cap out the crit, but we still need to have that brittle a little bit in order to cap out the crit. So like I said, we also need to focus on reservation efficiency. Now, before you're able to swap and before you get perseverance and you're able to get all of the anoints. So in order to run the aura, it actually is a lot of investment. You have to anoint sovereignty, which is actually not the cheapest anoint. I think it's actually 3 silver oils. And then you probably have to get a reservation efficiency essence and use it on your helmet. And in order to run that, and then you can run grace. So before you get all of that set up, I would pretty much just drop grace, and you probably won't be getting perseverance super early on, purely because perseverance is pretty, what's it called? It might be somewhat expensive depending on how many people are playing Lightning Strike Champion. So before you get perseverance and your aura sorted out, I'll probably just drop grace and rely on running Jade Flask. So you can see here, this is still 63% chance to evade, and running Grace brings it up to 84%. So Grace is not that much of a mandatory aura, but it is a huge damage boost once we can actually run Perseverance. Now, in 3.19, we also have to take Fortify, an extra node. Before, if people remember, this node was right here. But the good part about this is that we can choose to get 40% increased fortification duration, or 2 of these nodes to 80%. So what this means is that Fortify will pretty much be 10 seconds long, which is an incredibly long time. And that makes it feel a lot better for bossing, so you're not able to attack the boss. You'll still have Fortify, so it pretty much makes you one step closer to cosplaying as a champion. So overall, this build, a lot of people are always worried about spell suppression, and the fact of the matter is, I was able to cap out spell suppression on this pretty much, and I do think it's 96% right here. But you can pretty much cap out spell suppression with only one piece of gear with spell suppression. So right now, I only have the chest piece with spell suppression, and no other piece of gear has spell suppression. Now you might be wondering, how is this even possible? And this is pretty much possible because of the nodes that got buffed. So you take these nodes right here, the spell suppression cluster, and then you can also take the spell suppression cluster over here. And since we use evasion pieces, you can take 12% chance to suppress on this mastery. And if you really wanted to get there, you can drop some damage somewhere, and you would take these nodes right here, 8%, and then this one here is 10 plus 3. So this will be another like 21% spell suppression that is really accessible. So overall, getting spell suppression cap is not a big problem at all. Reservation mastery is definitely one of the most annoying parts of 3.19 that you have to find a workaround. Fortified duration should be absolutely huge for bossing. And people who are wondering about the brittle nerf, you will still be able to cap out brittle at just 4% if you just invest a little bit into crit. Now, another thing to note is that this is actually a huge buff if you intend to do Simulacrum. In Simulacrum, it's pretty hard to get ailment effect, and if you ever did Simulacrum before where you're completely relying on like 15 brittle, you'll notice on waves where you have reduced ailment effect that you actually struggle to kill Kostas really badly. Now, I do think that this is probably the strongest league starter, but it does have a huge learning curve, and the playstyle is 2 extra buttons. A lot of people always ask me, what are the extra buttons you have to press? And the extra buttons you have to press are pretty much General's Cry on left click, which is this thing, and then you also have to press Berserk on cooldown whenever it's up. So those are the 2 main things you have to press extra. And this build's kind of annoying to level, but you can level it with 2-hand axe and then swap over to claw once you travel over here. It's pretty much only harder level, but I do have a lot of leveling guide videos for it, and everything should still be the same in terms of leveling. But thanks for watching, everyone. I do hope that this little refresher course for Lightning Strike Berserker has maybe piqued your interest to play what I believe is the strongest starter. I do think that if you haven't played this build before and you can stand the buttons, I would definitely play this over Venom Jar or Deadeye. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Mirrors, Exalts, and Mage Bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye!